Alright, what's going on, you guys? Brian here, and this is my Impact Wrestling recap for tonight's episode. A lot of things happened on tonight's episode as far as the build up to their next pay-per-view, which is January 12th, entitled Hard to Kill, where the main event will be Sami Callihan defending his Impact Wrestling World title against Tessa Blanchard. Will history be made on that night? We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. But tonight's episode of Impact featured a lot of stuff happening, as I mentioned. Also, there are two news bits that I want to talk about as well. I'll give my thoughts about as far as yesterday. It was reported that Luke Harper, Sin Cara, and The Ascension were released by WWE. Luke, out of those four, Connor, Victor, Sin Cara, and Luke Harper, I think Luke Harper will have a career outside of WWE. I think whoever he signs with, if he signs with AEW, I think he'd be a major asset to their team. I just hope that if they do decide to pick up Luke Harper or any of the other guys, that they don't turn into like Impact Wrestling used to do, where every time somebody got released from WWE, let's pick him up, let's sign him. I don't want to see that. I'd rather see some talent that will be the future of the company or the future of the business be signed, not just because they were in WWE. So that was a piece of news yesterday. Today, it was reported that Robert Roode and Primo Cologne were suspended for a wellness violation. This comes as a surprise, especially with Primo, because I didn't think that he was still working for the company. However, I was reading online that apparently he was still part of the company, but he was allowed to compete for WWC out in Puerto Rico. So that was a surprise to me. I didn't even know that he was still working for the company. Robert Roode, his last appearance was not this past Friday, but I believe the week before Friday, on SmackDown, where they did a angle where he got hurt by Roman Reigns after a match with those two. So those were the huge news bit for today. Now, as far as Impact is concerned, I'll get right into that in just a moment. Right now, there was a funny segment involving Joey Ryan, Johnny Swinger, Tommy Dreamer, and I'll get into that in just a bit. We started off Impact with RVD versus Rhino. Of course, these two have had an issue since Rob Van Dam turned on Rhino at Bound for Glory. It was a old school rules match, which was basically an Extreme Rules match, but they can't use the word Extreme Rules anymore. Tommy Dreamer was the special referee. Katie Forbes, RVD's girlfriend, she would play an integral part in this match. Near the end, Rhino had hit the Gore through a table on RVD, sending him through a table. He would go for the pin. Dreamer would count 1, 2. Forbes would pull him out. Then RVD would get the advantage after that, picking up the W over Rhino. Then afterwards, Tommy Dreamer would go to shake RVD's hand. They would shake, if I remember correctly, and then RVD would kick him in the side of the head, knocking him down. So that was pretty much it. RVD, I don't know how I feel about his heel turn. I think it's a good one, but once again, This is RVD. You know, how long are they going to keep? Are they going to keep him heel? Um, we had He had a couple of segments throughout the show with the Knockouts champion Taya Valkyrie. There was one where she did an interview talking about her match coming up at Hard to Kill, the triple threat match, where she defends against Jordan Grace and ODB. We also saw a segment with Father James Mitchell and Susie where they were walking up these stairs and then Susie wandered off, but then Mitchell told her, "Don't pull on this noose because this." And Susie's like, "Well, this lady with a smile on her face told me to told me to pull to grab onto this noose," and she was kind of having like a flashback to when Havoc hung her with the noose. So that was pretty interesting. And then Mitchell told her that he's the only one that she should trust. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. We had, as far as action, we had an interview segment a little bit later on in the show with Brian Cage, where Jimmy Jacobs, who was doing the interview, asked him about what's next for him after, on being on such a losing track. And he said, "You know what? Uh, if I have to go through everybody again, that's what he'll do." That would be interrupted by RVD and Katie Forbes, who were making out. They started making out. They started getting, they ended up on the couch where Cage and Jacobs were sitting at. They were like, "What's going on here?" And RVD is like, are you guys done yet?" And he's like, "No, we're not done yet." And then he's like, "You know what? Come on, Katie, let's go find another place to be." So that kind of could be setting up something about with RVD and Cage, because RVD did make the comment before he left that Cage has been doing a lot of moves that RVD created, so that could be setting up something there with them. We had Fallah Bahh in action against Raj Singh. This was kind of like a trying to impress Gama situation for Raj. He would wind up losing, even though he was having help from Rohit Raju. But Fallah Bahh hitting the bonsai drop, picking up the W in that one. We had the Wrestlers Court involving Joey Ryan. Johnny Swinger apparently was suing or taking Joey Ryan to Wrestlers Court because of what happened last week, where Swinger asked Ryan to help him out during a match against Petey Williams, and Joey Ryan no-showed. The judge in this court case was Tommy Dreamer, who was wearing a druid costume like thing. And they were started out in the bathroom, but then wound up in another room because they were at, Joey was like, let's move that. Can we move this to an area that's more spacious? So this was actually pretty funny because it was like everybody, they had like Kiera Hogan, Madison Rayne, D'Lo Brown, all testifying against Joey Ryan, saying he has made a joke of the industry, made a joke of the business with his whole, flipping people with his private area, with his private. Basically, it was funny. If you did not see it, I would recommend checking it out because I thought it was really funny. Um, um, Joey would then give a speech saying that, making reference to the old timers saying they're blaming him for the business being the way it is now, and stuff like that. And he, you know, this business should be fun. Uh, Basically, Dreamer found him guilty and sentenced him to have a match against AC Romero, who was also in action. On tonight's episode, he took on Moose in a very hard-fought match, which Moose won with the no jackhammer needed spear. So that's a big match next week. AC Romero versus Joey Ryan. That was based on Tommy Dreamer sentencing Joey Ryan to face AC Romero next week. Then we had a tag team open, number one contender open tag team open. It was the Rascals, Dave and Jake Christ of OVE, Reno Scum, and Willie Mack and Rich Swann. Now, a little bit earlier in the match, Willie Mack did a dive outside the ring, wound up hurting his knee, suffering an injury, a knee injury or a leg injury, or an injury in general. That caused Rich Swann to compete by himself, and he would wind up picking up the win in this one when the Dave and Jake Christ would try to go for a double team move, but then he would counter into a victory roll, and that is what caused Rich Swann to pick up the win for his team. So therefore, with this victory, Rich Swann and Willie Mack, if he is able to compete, will go on to Hard to Kill to challenge the North for the Impact Tag Team titles. That's another huge match for that pay-per-view. They did also announce that at Hard to Kill, it's going to be Eddie Edwards versus Michael Elgin, with Eddie Edwards' Call Your Shot trophy that he won at Bound for Glory being on the line, or I don't know if he's going to accept, but Elgin did make the challenge for Eddie to put his Call Your Shot trophy on the line. Then we move on to the two big main event matches. It was Pick Your Poison. Tessa Blanchard was up first as she took on Madman Fulton of OVE. Of course, Sami Callihan chose him to be Tessa's opponent. Tessa would pick up the win via disqualification because Dave and Jake Christ got involved and went after Tessa. Ken Shamrock made the save. Shamrock was Tessa's hand-picked opponent for Sami. So that was the next one. Sami would pick up the win when the referee who got knocked down was still out. Madman Fulton would come out, and he would pick up Shamrock for a move, drop him on his head, and then Sami locked in the ankle lock submission on Shamrock, and the referee stopped the match. Then afterwards, Madman Fulton would go back after Shamrock, and then pick him up and throw him out of the to the mat below. And then he was going to continue to go after him after the referees were down checking on Shamrock, but Sami Callihan stopped him, and that was pretty much it for Impact this week. So overall, pretty decent episode of Impact. I haven't been watching it the last couple of weeks, but I have been keeping up. I've been doing a lot of moving. My mom and I, we bought a house last month, about near the end of last month, and we've been moving stuff around. And I'm currently in my new bedroom, so hopefully we'll get everything situated this weekend. But I thought this week's episode of Impact was actually pretty good. Can't wait to see what they have for next week. So with that being said, this has been my Impact Wrestling recap for tonight's episode. As always, I am Brian, and thank you for watching.